on locations throughout the world.
Standing passengers, please do not lean against the doors.
Picture goers, we bring to you new films of interest.
Chicago in State is next. Doors open on the left.
The miracle of the motion picture.
Please be considerate when talking on your phone or listening to electronic devices.
Chicago's a nice town if you're looking for pizza.
Welcome to 4 Stars, the Chicago Film Podcast where we talk about movies set in Chicago.
Each episode, we'll be discussing a different movie that's set in or was filmed in the Chicago area, its cultural/historic relationship to Chicago, and whether it's a good representation of the city.
We want to figure out what makes Chicago movies different from movies about other cities, and to answer the question of what a Chicago movie even is. I am one of your hosts, Jeremy Martyr, filmmaker and GM of the Heights Theater.
And I'm Paco Alvarez, a journalist based in Chicago. And on today's episode, we will be discussing 2009's Public Enemies, directed by Chicago hometown hero and returning director Michael Mann. I think our first returning director.
I think so, yeah.
I guess we did 3 Steven Soderbergh movies in a row.
True.
But,
Does the Chucky franchise have any?
Oh yeah, what do you call it? Like half of them are
Or that one guy?
Yeah.
But that's one episode. This is the first time we've
Yeah.
recorded a separate episode on the same director. Like you're saying, hometown hero. He's not a dumb egg. He's what's the opposite of a dumb egg?
Smart egg.
Smart egg.
Egghead.
There we go. An egghead. Yeah, he's an egghead.
He's an egghead.
Michael Mann. And the reason why I stumbled over what theater I was the GM of is because I was the GM of the Biograph Theater, but it's seen better days in the past.
Yeah.
Paco, what are we here to talk about?
So Public Enemies is part of our... Oh, did I not say Public Enemies?
Public Enemies, baby.
Public Enemies. 2009's Public Enemies, directed by Michael Mann. And it's part of our heist miniseries, One Last Score. We're talking about the heist and bank robbery movies of Chicago. We added bank robbery so that we could talk about Public Enemies. I mean, they're sort of heists in the movie. It's not like oh, we're getting like a little scheme together, but they're getting a gang together.
Philosophically, what is the difference between a bank robbery and a heist? Is it just the preparation process?
Yeah, I feel like traditionally with like a heist movie, they're trying to be like sneakier about it. And like with a bank robbery, you're just kind of going in there and like robbing it, you know?
Yeah. Put the money in the bag. See?
It's like Dog Day Afternoon isn't a heist movie.
That's a robbery.
Yeah. Or like
Set It Off. Right?
Yet to see that. I'm going to see that next week. But
oh, nice. Good movie.
Yes.
But that's a bank robbery.
Hosted by Cortland Kelly.
Cortland Kelly? Oh, it's part of Safapalooza.
Yes.
This is going to come out before or after that?
I don't know. Depends on how I'm feeling.
Well, anyway, yeah, Cortland is an amazing guest on our podcast. And if this episode releases before the beginning of Safapalooza, then get your ass up and go watch some lesbian movies.
Speaking of guests, today's guest
Mm-hmm.
is film critic Isaac Feldberg, who will be joining us later on to talk about Public Enemies.
Yes, he will. And in the meantime, do you want to talk about what was going on in the city in 2009, Paco?
Yes, 2009. We were both... Actually, this was before your 13th birthday. But this movie came out. Wide release was July 1st, 2009. But it had its Chicago and worldwide premiere. The worldwide premiere was in Chicago on June 19th, 2009. I couldn't really find anything on July 1st. It was a Wednesday, which means it was 4th of July weekend. It's kind of funny that this was the 4th of July big movie that year. And so I chose the June 19th date to find an article, and I found one that I think you might be interested in. So the headline is from the Chicago Tribune. It's "Whose relatives got clouded into U of I? Cases of questionable acceptances show pull of elected officials, Blagojevich contributors." So the article, so we've talked a lot the past few episodes about the the Chicago machine and like the use of clout and like what exactly the Chicago machine is, like all these politicians and sort of like doing favors for its constituents in return for constituents like contributing to them and voting for them. And this article is a really clear example of like how that worked, especially with the Mike Madigan, I was going to say regime, machine. But so the article is essentially about how there were 800 politically connected applicants who had been given to special consideration at Urbana-Champaign. And the school administration didn't want to give out the names of those politically connected applicants because they were like, well, it's not their fault. It's like they're, like their family members were doing this stuff. But the Chicago Tribune was able to find a few people like direct connections. One of them was a relative of Chicago Alderman Frank Olivo. Olivo. Who, so I think it was his nephew. It was just a relative of his who didn't have the grades to get into this like special bachelor's, master's degree in accounting. And so Olivo had like connected to Mike Madigan's office, who reached out to the University of Illinois lobbyist. That's crazy. They have a lobbyist who, it's unclear. You can't prove that they definitely got him in, but like he wasn't going to get in because his grades weren't enough. And then a month later, after this email, he got in, and they were like, "Well, you got to keep your grades up." And then there was also another person who had gone in because of after they were their family member was a Blagojevich contributor. So yeah, there's this is kind of just a small little example of we've mentioned machine politics in the past, and this is just like this is how it works. You're connected to someone, and they're able to get your nephew into the accounting program at U of I.
I just have 3 things to say about that.
Yeah.
ILL, baby. That's my school. I last night I went to the Parkway Theater here in Minneapolis to see a movie called Dick. Have you seen Dick?
No, I've not.
It's a 1999 comedy with Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams about. I knew it was about the Richard Nixon scandal, Watergate. I didn't know how much it was about that. It is all about that.
They're Deep Throat, right?
That's like they are Deep Throat in it. Yeah. Yep, that's the joke. I just realized how much that us talking on this podcast about Chicago graft and crime makes Watergate look like small potatoes.
I don't know about that.
You know what I mean, though?
No.
You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like the types of crime that happens in Chicago is like, yes, it doesn't go all the way to the top the way that the reason why Watergate was such a big deal is because it was the cover up, right? And it was the president. But like what Watergate was is kind of boring.
Yeah, I think in retrospect, I think pretty much like not every president, but certain presidents have done much worse than Watergate. And I kind of see what you mean. Like there are definitely, like thinking about a few episodes ago, we talked about how like the Chicago police had like the Red Scare unit that was like spying on like different groups, and like they had like people within groups who were like spying on each other, like.
Yeah, and there's just more colorful characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're more like Haldeman isn't interesting. You know what I mean? Like I just don't think that these Nixon like cronies, all the people around him, all the people that the entire 1970s, 80s, and 90s were obsessed with are that like, I don't know, like I get it, but like it's just not that interesting for me to watch.
Yeah.
And like when I'm watching what's the Robert Redford one? I'm sorry.
All the President's Men.
Yeah, I'm like, I understand the importance here, but like the weight of it, but I'm also just I'm not that connected to it.
That's fair. I think I think the way that it's been like portrayed in the public imagination and like in like movies and stuff isn't as interesting as like the actual thing. Because like the guys who were breaking into water like into the Watergate Hotel, like the guys like Nixon's private little like intelligence agency that he was sending around to cause all this chaos, like they were all like former like CIA guys who had like been involved like training Cubans, and like also they were like with a bunch of like Cubans like at the Watergate. Like there's a lot of like spook stuff, like a lot of like
There's more.
yeah.
Yeah, that's maybe where what I'm talking about is like maybe there's a more interesting history that I'm just maybe I need to read more. But like the movies about Watergate, the SNL skits, because like basically Dick is like one long SNL skit. It literally has like the cast of SNL in it. It's like Anna Gasteyer and Will Ferrell and stuff. I just don't think it's that interesting, or their angles or their takes on it are that interesting. And I'm like, the Chicago guys are way more like funny and weird, and the types of crime that they're doing are way more on the surface. But maybe you know.
Yeah, I also do think in retrospect, given everything that's happened in the past 50 years since Watergate, like it feels kind of a little quaint.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. It feels quaint. Like it feels like, again, even like knowing that that Richard Nixon recorded a bunch of tapes and stuff. Like that's like what the movie is also about.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirsten Dunst has an incredible line where she goes, "And I'm Jewish." It's to Richard Nixon. It's really funny. But like knowing that like parodying Nixon can't get crazier than Nixon himself talking into those tapes.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
And so like that's just what I mean. Like, and it feels quaint in terms of like that scandal compared to like what we know about the history and then like since then. But yeah, I've now backed myself into a corner here, but I feel like, I don't know. Maybe I just need to get more read on the subject. Speaking of criminals.
Good. Wow. A lot of great transitions in this episode.
John Dillinger, am I right?
Yeah. John. Speaking of criminals, J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah. Oh, bada bing.
Here's our conversation with film critic Isaac Feldberg about Public Enemies.
All right, and we want to welcome to the podcast film critic for Letterboxd Journal and RogerEbert.com, and someone who many are considering the new Roger Ebert. That's what I'm reading here on my page. We could litigate that down the road. How are you doing, Isaac Feldberg? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. You heard it here first on 4 stars. But no, I'm delighted to be here, especially to dive into talk all things man.
When we elect a new Roger Ebert, which building do we set the pillar of white smoke up in?
I think the Gene Siskel, just to piss him
right
off.
above the Gene Siskel. That's absolutely right. We are here today to talk about Michael Mann's Public Enemies. But before we get into that, Isaac, can you tell us a little bit about your connection to the city of Chicago, how you got here, your Chicago journey?
Absolutely. I came to Chicago about 5 years ago. I moved here actually because my partner, Kat Sullivan, friend to the pod, friend to the Music Box Theater community, had already been out in Chicago. She moved out with friends after college. Kat and I had met long distance. And during the pandemic, long distance dating was terrible, was not for me. And so I decided to close that gap and move to Chicago. So that's what brought me here originally, and I've called the sort of Southport area of Lakeview home ever since, and it's been great.
Yeah, I having Isaac live in the basement of the music box has been great. Going down there every once in a while to feed you has been, difficult at times to
Well, if
remember.
you
But
just unchain me, then I will be able to go to the fridge myself.
no, Isaac is an incredible critic and a welcome member of our music box community. Frequently at premieres doing Q&As, etc. Most recently you did a Q&A, correct?
Yes, I did, and I know how to pronounce the film's name too. It's Arupsia. The
Arupsia.
Arupsia.
Right.
The Pete O's film with Jeremy O'Harris had both of them there. Very lively, fun Q&A, as it
I
always
have
is.
I have friends who worked at local bars around, and they said that those two had a lot of fun that night in the city of Chicago afterwards. All good stuff, but that they were celebrating their big premiere and their big night here in Chicago.
As well they should. I heard, Boys Town, yelled triumphantly as they got into the car, and then that was the last I saw.
Well, speaking of the uptown Southport area, we are discussing
Transitions.
the good work of John Dillinger. This is an interesting story, of a very Chicago story. The production of this movie is complicated in where they were filming. But the story of John Dillinger was in and around the area in which you live, Isaac, in the area in which I grew up. Paco, you read a little bit more than I believe I did for this. You read a whole book to prepare for this screening.
Yes.
This episode.
Yes. So I read the book that this movie is based on, Public Enemies by, let me get it, Brian Burrows. Brian Burrows, who is a journalist who he's one of those journalists who I feel like he'll write something just not like just to get it adapted, but like oftentimes like he'll write like an article or a book or something and it'll just like immediately get picked up. He has this really funny article from a few years ago about what it was like being a journalist during like the 80s and 90s when like there was money in it, and just like how like Graydon Carter and Vanity Fair, like they would just like give him like so much money to just like do random stuff, and how great that was. But Brian Burrows, so originally the book, I guess I just mentioned he writes stuff to get it optioned. The book started out the opposite way, where HBO hired him to write a mini series on like the FBI's war on crime in the 30s. And he got really into that, and he realized it was bigger than a mini series could hold, so he ended up writing a book about it, and then that got optioned by Michael Mann, or Michael Mann got attached eventually. The book itself it's like 600 pages. It's very in depth, and it's not just about John Dillinger. It's also about like all the other criminals in that milieu. So you meet a few of them in the movie, like Alvin, what's his name? Alvin something.
Alvin Karpis?
Yeah, Alvin Karpis and the Barker Gang, Pretty Boy Floyd, Babyface Nelson. There's also, while all this was happening, there was also Bonnie and Clyde. Like they're also in the book. So like the book
Hammers
is like,
McGee, Zach.
yeah, just
Snubnose Johnson.
Yeah, exactly.
all the guys.
Yeah, all the guys, all your favorite characters. So the book is like very in depth. It's a little bit too in depth, I would say. Like he just like goes into like meticulous detail of like every single bank like that you can prove that they robbed. So it's just like constant like, oh yeah, like they went here and then 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 you head out here. And I think like it doesn't make like the most compelling read, but it's definitely like it can be pretty fun. But I think it's a very like fruitful amount of research for Michael Mann and like his type of filmmaking, I would say. Like I think like he like all the research in the book, like I think Mann is able to like, even if he doesn't like directly adapt it, he's able to use that detail for like the background and for like the general vibe of the movie. But yeah, John Dillinger was an Indianan, a Hoosier, who committed a series of bank robberies in the 30s during the Great Depression, and he became kind of this cultural figure who, one, he was really, I think he really liked movies, and he was like really aware of his own like presence and like his relationship to the media. And I think like that the movie does a really good job of portraying that. And while this was happening, there were just like bank robberies were happening all over the country. And back then, the federal government just didn't really have a police force. Like this was sort of as the movie kind of portrays, like the birth of like what we now know as the FBI. The book like the book starts with like this massacre of federal agents in Oklahoma, I believe. And it brings up that like they couldn't, it was really difficult to figure out, like they killed a bunch of like federal agents, and it was really hard to figure out like how to even go after the guys, because like killing a federal agent wasn't a crime. Like it was just like a lot of like laws were just
it wasn't
like,
a crime. It wasn't a crime at all.
no, like
Or it wasn't more of a crime than
yeah, it wasn't like a federal crime. Like
it was murder.
yeah, but it wasn't like right now if you kill a federal agent, like that's a really bad thing. But like back then, it was just like kind of just killing a guy. No comment. And then so yeah, and I think yeah, and then Hoover, not Herbert, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, he took, there were all these like crimes happening, and he kind of took this as his chance to really pioneer this new way of doing federal investigations. And the movie, I think the movie does a pretty good job of portraying that. Like before this, the war on crime, most federal agents did not know how to shoot guns. Most of them were like little bureaucratic guys. Most of them were just doing like tax evasion and that kind of stuff. And then guys like what's his face, Melvin Purvis. Yeah, Purvis were sort of instrumental.
Tough racket to be named Purvis.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Were instrumental in making the professionalizing the FBI and making it more of a force to actually be dealt with. But also, I think the movie makes Purvis to be more of a badass than he actually was. Like in the book, he was constantly fucking up, and you see that a few times in the movie where like he doesn't like get enough backup, or he like doesn't plan things correctly. But like in the book, like it makes clear like he was like constantly fucking up. And at some point, like he was replaced as the head of the Chicago office because of how bad he was fucking up.
Yeah. I think Dale saw that and was like, no,
Yeah.
I left banana peels for my version.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes a more compelling story.
And it's interesting that the movie, I mean, we'll get into it. The movie portrays it as him being like, I have obstacles that are being laid in my path by the FBI, and the mistakes that are being made are ones that are like organizational.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be like, if you give me the manpower, I can take these guys down.
The manpower.
Yeah. Well, speaking of manpower, God, I'm just doing awesome transitions today. Isaac, can you tell us a little bit about your connection to Michael Mann, and why you decided to come on this episode today?
Oh, well, I am, delighted to be on the episode just to speak with you both, regardless of the film. But, with regard to Michael Mann specifically, he's just someone who I've been, appreciative to see the critical sort of, I don't want to say the critical tide has turned in his favor, because I think he's always been beloved in certain quarters as a filmmaker. But I think that this film is a really interesting example of where something that was initially kind of received with very strong caveats and divisively by certain people because of how it looked, this like digital cinematography that Mann is shooting in, I'm sure we'll talk about. It becomes a very interesting transitional film in his career, because it was, I believe, his first all digital film. And his prowess in using digital cinematography to accentuate details of the stories that he's telling, to either, heighten a sense of romance, or, create a certain reality within the frame that he's then kind of shrouding back into myth by virtue of the kinds of characters he's telling stories about. I think that this film is a really interesting example of that in his filmography. And I guess I would just say largely for Michael Mann, I think that he's one of the most romantic directors that we have. He is someone who's obsessed with the kind of schisms between professional and personal life, and whether there can be a separation between work and love, or whether these two things are somehow one and the same, or constantly, displacing one another in the course of someone's life. And so I think that he's explored those themes so beautifully and in so many different keys that, like a filmmaker like Martin Scorsese, who I'm sure we'll talk about related to this as well, even, everything Paco's laying out there reminds me a lot of the kind of background of Killers of the Flower Moon, what that's showing about the birth of the FBI and why that was important at that time. But like Scorsese, or even, like a Paul Schrader, man, is just someone who has been making films about these same ideas so consistently that I just really enjoy looking for the variations within these films and looking for the ways that Public Enemies connects back to something like Heat, or connects to something like Black Hat from a different angle, or something like Ferrari, I believe his most recent film. And so, I when I think about Public Enemies, I enjoy the experience of Public Enemies itself, but I also find it fascinating to look at in the greater context of man.
I'm right there with you, Isaac. I was watching this last night and appreciating things, but mostly finding myself thinking about his other movies.
Mhm.
And rarely was I like swept up in the story or the romance or the, and there was moments where I'd be like, but mostly I was appreciating. Mostly I was like, oh wow, that's such an interesting choice. That's um I felt very similarly watching this as I did to Ferrari, although Ferrari, I mean, had the benefit of uh I watched it in a theater.
Yep.
Although thinking back, Paco and I were talking about this a little bit before the record. Did I watch this in a theater? I have no memory of watching it in a theater, but I definitely watched it when it came out, so I must have, because it's not like I was seeking this out on physical media or watching it on TV, possibly. But the act of watching this movie is not something that's like implanted in my brain.
Mhm.
Like I don't remember where I was the day. Um, but I do think about um scenes from this movie quite often, and especially that last 5 minutes. But I don't know if you guys can place yourselves in when you watch this for the first time.
Hmm. Baca?
Yeah, I definitely saw this in theaters. I remember that much. I just don't remember what exactly I thought of it. It was 2009. I was 13, and this was right about the time when I was starting to become more aware of like actors that I liked and directors that I liked. And I really loved Christian Bale at this time. I think probably because I'd seen The Dark Knight and like the Nolan movies.
Hmm.
So I remember being very excited for this movie because of Christian Bale. My dad was a huge Johnny Depp fan. No comment. And he was really excited, and he loved crime movies in general, so he was really excited for that aspect. So I remember we saw it in theaters. I think he really liked it. I remember being sort of disappointed. I think because in retrospect, it's probably because it's so romantic and like so much focused on like the romance. And I think I was 13 and I wanted to like an action go 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 movie. And this movie isn't like, sometimes it's like that, but sometimes it's not. So I don't really remember my reaction to it at the time, but I do remember a lot of the scenes with when I was rewatching it. I remembered a lot of the scenes between John Dillinger and Billy Frechette. But other than that, I definitely didn't pick up on the visual nature of it and how crazy it is. When I initially watched it.
Because you're not really like you're watching it and you get this kind of HD look that
Hmm.
just makes this period time feel very present tense, but in a way that I don't think, you're watching that play out initially. You have to step back and think about the effect of that and what it's doing to you psychologically to
Hmm.
engage in the story to really, I think, appreciate why that's an interesting choice. I do remember seeing this in 2009. I was in high school. I just I remember I remember being underwhelmed by it. I remember specifically, I think Christian Bale, to your point, Paco, was like one of the big headlines to do of this movie at the time.
Hmm.
Because wasn't this like right before this movie came out was when he had his Terminator
Yeah.
Salvation set rant
Yeah,
and like
definitely.
he was suddenly I was like, oh my God, Christian Bale is not only like he might be a great actor because he's also a complete asshole. Like, it
Yeah.
was like those like kind of things. I was like, oh, and then of course he works with David O. Russell next, so it all kind of fits together.
But wasn't
Um,
he like completely vindicated about that rant? Like, am I wrong remembering that? Like that was like the people who worked on set for Terminator Salvation, they were all like, no, Christian Bale was right to yell at the cinematographer. And he wasn't yelling at some random guy. It was the cinematographer. It was the director of photography of Terminator Salvation. Am I
I
wrong?
I remember reading something about this, and I don't want to speak out of turn,
Because
related to that, but this was
because
also
Christian
a
Bale
movie.
since then. Oh, I'm sorry, Isaac, go
Oh no, I was just gonna say this is also a movie directed by McG. Like I would fully believe that Christian Bale had some ground to stand on in terms of his frustration. Just when you get into like relative credibility of like who Christian Bale is related to the rest of that. You're also making a Terminator sequel, but I think everything I've heard about those sets is that they can get annoying and intense because of people who are just kind of not doing their job or being clumsy or walking through shots. And I remember reading something to the effect of like this was not the first time that the cinematographer had himself ruined a shot that
Yeah.
they were acting at the time it was happening.
If I'm not mistaken, and Paco put in a big gunshot or a rat-a-tat if I'm wrong. When you fact check this out or after, he was literally that cinematographer was famous for going in and adjusting lights during takes. So he was interrupting the acting process of a McG picture, which is very important to a McG project, the acting process. But I think that like Christian Bale was known at that time for his body transformations. He was known for these physical transformations, and the fact that he had gotten jacked so quickly, people had linked to steroid usage, which was I think not true, and just like a thing that people had assumed, or if he did, whatever, it's his body. Um, but I think that was sort of linked in like this like freak out moment with the steroid usage and like him getting jacked and all these things. And I think like since then, and you're right, Isaac, to point out the fact that he worked multiple times with David O. Russell. Um, but he has been known to be a massive chiller. Like I like everything that I like have read since then. Like he's intense and focused on his thing, but like his relationship with his family, like his like relationships with the different actresses he works with, like the word on the street about Christian Bale, and I don't know
Hmm.
the man, is that he's a total chiller. Which is very much so in conscious with the way that I had sort of pictured him in our, you know, in when at this time.
He has this very sort of withdrawn, closed off quality to him in a lot of roles, certainly in his performance in Public Enemies, but I feel like even in the public eye, I think of him being like quite like solemn and withdrawn more than I think about him being like, balls to the wall crazy, which is interesting because he has done so many like roles that we would deem to be transformative, something like American Psycho, something to the other extreme like Vice, um, where he's going through these very intense transformations. But I also just like think of his solidity as an actor, and I think he's done an interesting job of just being credible and respectable rather than someone who is kind of like in the. I also don't see him speaking out about, genocide in Gaza. So I don't mean that this is like, all complimentary, but like
Yeah.
he seems to stage manage his professional image quite carefully to
Mhm.
be a professional. Like that is what he wants to be known as, is a professional.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that stems from this big blow up.
You're unbelievable, man.
I just don't understand.
You don't fucking understand. what it's like working with actors. That's what that is.
I don't think that's what that...
That's what that is, man. I'm telling you.
Hey, my family's coming to town. Do you mind pretending that I'm the director?
I'm gonna fucking kick your fucking ass. You don't shut up for a second,
Please
all
don't
right?
hurt me, Mr. Bale.
I'm gonna go. Do you want me to go fucking trash your lights?
No.
Do you want me to fucking trash them?
No, I don't want you to trash him.
You do it one more.
And it reminds me a lot of the Tom Cruise moment in the pandemic. And I think like there was almost like the opposite effect in the pandemic of like people being like, remember when the Christian Bale thing happened and we freaked out? Like, maybe let's take a step back and be like, does Tom Cruise have a point here about safety on set? Like there was like sort of like that, like, because Tom Cruise was at that moment sort of back.
Yeah.
In a way, you know, and like in a way that we were like sort of like, the champion of cinema. He doesn't want people to get COVID. He wants to bring the movies back. And that sort of like same intensity, that fervor, that like passion, I feel like 10 years before. I guess more like 12 years before. The reaction from the public was so different.
Yeah, I think there were rumblings that like Cruise himself had helped release that audio recording to kind of prove to like the insurers and other people that they were taking.
Well, he would never do a
seriously.
PR stunt.
Yeah. I think it's interesting talking about this because I think there were also rumors around the Public Enemies set that Michael Mann and Johnny Depp and maybe Christian Bale had all had kind of like friction together. Johnny Depp, who I'm sure we will talk about more in depth, you know, as everyone loves his on-set behavior, but Michael Mann I think is known as being a perfectionist, and I think maybe sometimes he and Depp would butt heads. But I couldn't find like definitive proof of like anything that like happened. There were just like rumblings.
But I just think that like, you know, like Michael Mann's ideal of a human being is like a Stephen Lang, not like a Johnny Depp. You know what I mean? Like there's a guy who's like made out of steel and like, you know, like a crag-faced, you know, brooder. And I think that like Johnny Depp is crag-faced brooder, but I think he's a very like sensitive, you know, he comes from a different stock than like the Michael Mann archetype guy. And I really do feel like Michael Mann had to like mold him into being a Michael Mann type. And we could talk a little bit about whether or not we think that's successful. I go back and forth on whether I think Johnny Depp is good in this movie or whether it works, whether he's good or not, whether it works for the movie. I don't know. Let's throw it to you guys. What do you think about Jonathan Depp?
I would just say that, you know, I'm not. I think that, you know, when it comes to his performance in this movie, it is an interesting underplay that he is doing compared to what we generally think of when we think about Johnny Depp as well. I mean, obviously, of course, he seemingly, you know, a terrible human offset, and I think that has like his sort of I believe legally proven status as an abuser of women has rightfully overtaken his professional accomplishments. But I do think this movie is interesting because you've got like the Johnny Depp of Captain Jack Sparrow and the Mad Hatter and these like super zany performances. And this one is, funnily enough, like an interesting mirror to Christian Bale and how withdrawn and closed in he is. Johnny Depp, his Dillinger is very like calm and almost like creepy. He's very like cold and still. And regardless of whether or not he's, you know, good or bad, I would just say that the choices that he's making are adding to a certain element of the film and what it's doing with myth making and with the archetype of the bank robber, where you're kind of getting this guy who, especially like, you know, the way this movie is shot, the sort of focus on him, you're seeing him really cut down to size and made very flesh and blood, made very mortal. But then the way that Johnny Depp is playing it is almost as if he like has read the end of the script and is still thinking about it the entire time. Like he's just like super like seemingly like, you know, aware of where this is all going. There's a certain fatalism that I pick up on in the way that he is just like I think of a scene where he like a very heat adjacent scene where he watches an associate get shot and then he like kind of goes and he gets in the car and he drives away and there's just this very like kind of stoic, hollowed out sadness to him in that moment where when we're thinking about this movie sort of playing with the idea of the gangster being this celebrity at this point in history, because I think this movie is also playing a lot with like how the lore and the mythos of John Dillinger was created as he was on the run. You're kind of coming face to face with him and seeing that he's very like, pockmarked and scarred and just a guy. I don't know. That's kind of I'm meandering off there, but that's sort of what I think about when I think about him in this film.
I hear you, Isaac. I for me, Johnny Depp mirrors the sort of public perception of Johnny Depp mirrors the public perception of John Dillinger pretty well for this. In this movie, I think like sort of the idea that like they have this sort of like fun romanticized version of the bank robber in the first half of like
Mhm.
being like a guy who's like maybe like he's in the system and like giving to the people, like kind of like Johnny Depp was viewed as like a he's not like the rest of those Hollywood phonies, like he's like outside this, he's like kind of like a Nicolas Cage type where they're a little outside of all that. And I do think that like the public soured on Dillinger. There was an idea that like the violence was getting closer and closer, it was getting worse and worse. He was getting more and more desperate, and that the public turned on him. So there is a metatextual element to this movie where that works for me. Where another place where it works is like, or maybe doesn't work for what Mann was trying to do, but maybe works for me internally, is like there is an edge when he slams the guy's fist at the coat rack. And basically shows an act of violence to get Marion Cotillard, right? Like there is a very like it makes your blood run cold when he does that. And knowing how complicated, not the word, how messed up Johnny Depp's relationship and with women is, it really is disturbing to watch that scene. And it is, I think it counteracts like what the movie's trying to do in terms of the romance, but maybe the thrill of being with a criminal, the thrill of being with someone that can take you out of your existence. Like you understand where Marion Cotillard's coming from, but there is like a tone and an imbalance to watching it now, where it's like almost too much too quickly, where it's completely unintentional and it's distracting to have him in that role. I don't know. Now I'm rambling, but I felt like sort of like I was going back and forth with Johnny.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying completely. I mean, it does feel like the fact that he is in this movie now makes it pretty clear that this is never going to be Michael Mann's most embraced or reevaluated film because you can't really get past the fact that you are watching Johnny Depp as a really, brutal killer. Like and there's a certain lack of ceremony to it as well, where I just think and we'll talk about Marion Cotillard's performance in this, I'm sure as well. But that part of the movie is interesting because as much as Michael Mann, I was saying earlier, is a very romantic director, I think that relationship in this film um, is all about sort of just him being like kind of cut down to size as like being something much simpler and more everyday than this mythical kind of outlaw.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think my issue with Depp, and I think part of it comes from this sort of the metatextual element, is just that like I do think to a certain extent John Dillinger was a charming guy and he's supposed to be like a charming guy, and it's hard for me to attribute that to Depp and to like buy into it. And I don't even think it's like I don't think it's purely on like because I don't like him as like a person. I can't find him charming. Like as an example of another problematic actor, Mel Gibson, who is, there's a lot of shit about him. But whenever I see a movie that he's starring in, or almost always when I see a movie he's starring in, I'm like super compelled by him, and I find him very charming. And it's like one of like the greatest tragedies of all time that he died in 2003 and nothing ever happened. But like I'm able to separate that with him. And with Depp, I think there's just like there's a woodenness that I think to a certain extent works when he's playing Dillinger as this guy who's obsessed with his image, who is like always aware of his angles, who is like, he's getting the prosecutor to put his arm around him, like all these elements, or when he's like watching the movie and he's like relating to Clark Gable and he's thinking about like how he sees himself as a star of his own movie, like that stuff works for me. But when he's like trying to be like the kind of like earthy, kind of relatable bank robber guy, it doesn't. When he's trying to like be like the cold, hard edged, like badass Dillinger, it like kind of does. But like when it's like the human Dillinger doesn't really come out to me. And I think that's my issue with his performance.
I'm with you, and I think the romance is like, see, like I'm so down in theory for the romance of this movie, and the last scene really does work for me, and I think it works better because it's Marion Cotillard acting up against Stephen Lang. And the scenes between the two of them, I don't think they're bad together, but there is something that is a little off about Marion Cotillard's performance, and it probably comes from the writing or what they're asking of her. Did you guys see this crazy section of this Wikipedia page where it says that she trained herself to speak in a French, Canadian, Menominee, Wisconsin, Chicago accent? What does that mean?
All of them at the same time?
It says French Canadian Menominee Wisconsin Chicago. Like, what?
Yeah.
Who told her to do that? Like, was that Michael Mann? And he just like started saying places that they were filming, and she was just like, they needed someone to liaise with the locals.
Dude, was she French Canadian?
Yeah,
the actual.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And she was part Menominee. I think to defend her accent, I will say, I feel like we live in a time when, over the past like few decades in America, English has been sort of like flattened of its affect. And I think like because of like television, because of social media, because of movies, like more people talk more similarly to each other. And like you got to think about like the 30s, like there were parts of this country that were just like literally like without plumbing, This was like the Great Depression. This was like there are parts of like the rural areas that were really like almost like in another century compared to like, a city like Chicago. And like this was just the start of radio. Like, I think that like there were a lot more different varieties of people, and I think people were talking weird. So like I'm just like I think that like it doesn't take me out of it that she doesn't speak like with a perfect accent. Like I think it.
No, I don't care about that. I just think, is she doing that?
Yeah, it's hard to. It's hard, but it doesn't like.
It's kind of, you can't really prove she's not doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
So many different things that she's trying to do.
Exactly. It kind of reminded me of in Elvis, the Baz Luhrmann, where like Tom Hanks is talking like a fucking crazy person.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then you
the best performance of all time.
And then you watch a video of the real guy, and he talks like a fucking insane person. Like people just like talked weird. Like it doesn't like.
Yeah, the other example of this you need to see if you can find the audio is whatever Jodie Comer is doing in The Bike Riders.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It's just, of course, a film with a great music box connection in our own Rebecca Lyon. Rebecca Lyon. Leon, that come from.
That's
Rebecca
your accent, Isaac, coming out.
Yeah. No, that's just my approach to words, as I mispronounce.
But no, you're right. That was a music box connection because Jodie Comer, or the director, played it on stage at the music box. He played the actual accent of the Jodie Comer character.
Yeah.
And was like she sounded like that. Like she's doing a really good job.
It's just accent strong enough to chew. It's like it's it's really interesting to kind of see exactly what you're talking about, Paco. Like we currently are dealing with the death of regionality, but everyone used to kind of really reflect their origins. And like this was kind of an interesting exotic person to have come into John Dillinger's life. So I understand the appeal of man of casting someone like Marion Cotillard, who's just so far afield. I
Mhm.
also am seeing in the background of this that she was cast in part because she wasn't, going to be in Nine at the time that she was going to be in Nine.
Right.
Remember everyone's favorite movie Nine, Rob Marshall's Nine,
Oh my
with
God. I just watched Chicago for the first time, and my review for that was it's too bad that Rob Marshall died in 2002. But
everyone's dying right when they need to die is
Yeah.
what I
yeah, it's sad. This is the second time we brought it up in this episode.
know.
I
If Paco likes Mel Gibson movies, I've got good news for him about 2027.
wait, there's a new one?
Yeah, there's
Uh,
he has
a
risen.
two-part. Yeah, he has
He gets
risen.
us.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is part officially now the Resurrection of the Christ, part one.
Oh my God.
Part one, Dead
Jesus
Reckoning.
Christ.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. Are they filming that in Chicago? Are we gonna have to cover that one?
We're gonna
Maybe
have
it's
to
the
cover that
maybe it's the Mormon story where Jesus comes to America.
hmm
Isn't that part of the Mormon
Or
myth?
no, I think in the Mormon myth, the 12 tribes of Israel like were like Native American or something.
They were
Like,
originally from here and then they moved
yeah,
out
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Makes
let's
sense.
popularize that. That's
Right.
a
That
good
makes
thing
sense.
for us to.
I do want to talk about a performance that's like one of my favorites in this movie, which is Billy Crudup as J. Edgar Hoover. I think it is a really interesting and not one that I remembered at all. But when I was rewatching it, I was really impressed. It's a strong creative choice, maybe from Mann, maybe from Billy Crudup, to play J. Edgar Hoover as Donald Rumsfeld, but a really really strong one in my opinion. I think that in other versions of J. Edgar, his life, including the movie J. Edgar, there is an attempt to make him more complicated, or maybe look cool, um, or maybe look like a fool, or maybe like make him into a cartoon character. And I think Crudup plays him as the sort of dorky fascist that is obsessed with image, and obsessed with making all these boys look exactly the same. And there's that line where he literally references the Italian fascists and says, "Take off the white glove to get your hands dirty." That is really interesting. And a Michael Mann moment, like we talked about on Thief with Daniela, where he'll just say the thing,
Yeah.
and then they'll say like 80 other like very obscure, like detail oriented FBI terms, but like he'll be like, "So we're being fascist here, right, guys? So it's fascism," and then that will stick in your craw.
Yeah. There's apparently in the screenplay, Mann compares the FBI offices to the work of Albert Speer, the architect for the Third Reich. So
That is what Michael Mann thinks of
yeah.
J. Edgar Hoover, but he doesn't represent him as some over the top villain.
No, I think much like the real Hoover, he's portrayed as kind of like a vindictive little bureaucratic nerd, like a guy who's been like pushed around, and he finally sees his chance to kind of to get one over on everyone.
He's got the G-man sort of bug. He just keeps yelling that walking around. And another, really tremendous accent on him in this as well. But it's interesting because I know that J. Edgar Hoover is a very divisive figure. He's also like someone who people have talked about him as being someone who enjoyed cross-dressing, as being someone who's like more effeminate. And there is a certain kind of quality to him where he is a little bit ridiculous in this, but in the same way, like, man is shooting him so directly that you're kind of getting the little things about him, and they aren't like, massive kind of character choices, but they are like things about him that you kind of notice that you're like, oh, okay, so this is where this perception of him came from. But in the same way that the movie, I think, is trying to put a pretty cold digital light on everything, it's definitely, not interested in doing a like, larger than life kind of print the legend performance of Hoover in the same way that they're not doing it with Dillinger or Purvis.
Yeah, definitely. I think Crudup does a good job, and it's interesting that this was the year after Watchmen.
Yeah.
Kind of a different, omnipresent type of performance.
You're just seeing him scrubbing like blue paint off and like leaving the background of scenes.
Yeah.
I will say, like, from a casting perspective, like the 2009 is an interesting time because like all of the guys, like all of the fellas are there.
Oh my
Like just
God. It was amazing to see.
how many fellas are in this film? We need to think about, who was on this set at the
To
same.
run through the guys. We have John Ortiz, we have Bill Camp, we have Stephen Graham. There's just like
It's
face.
like it's like Oppenheimer almost, of just like, oh shit, like he's here too, like Channing
I
Tatum.
know.
Yeah, Pretty Boy Floyd is getting shut down immediately. You killed Channing Tatum off right away.
Yeah.
Sean Hatosi is an FBI agent in this.
Yeah, that was so
Yeah.
strange. Lily
It's like-
Taylor.
Lily Taylor's so good in this. I wish that the Lily Taylor character had her own movie.
Mm-hmm.
She's one of the fellas.
Yeah.
She's one of the fellas for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Giovanni Ribisi, not one of the fellas, but he's there.
He mentions Giovanni Ribisi's character mentions St. Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out the Twin Cities.
Yes.
I loved that. And having the fellas together. I think Michael. What I like about this movie, but also what kind of confuses me watching it, is that Michael Mann pretty well. Yes, he has emotion and characters longing at each other across the bars of a prison cell. But what he also does is by having all these guys, by having all these fellas, he does replicate the feeling of reading a nonfiction book,
Mhm.
of being like, oh, like you're mentioning 8 names, but you're not going to describe who this person is. But by the last chapter, when all the characters have been fleshed out, you sort of start to get an idea. And by casting all these guys, by casting Channing Tatum in a blink or you'll miss it performance as Pretty Boy Floyd, it's like, oh, we get that's Channing Tatum. And that scene is like shot like it's, it's insane the way that it's shot. So it's like, I was watching it last night with my family's here in town, and my brother was like, is that Channing Tatum? And we were all laughing at him because we were like, yeah, okay, that's Channing Tatum. And it was, and he was absolutely right. And I had completely forgotten that that's who that was. But by casting someone like that, I know that Channing Tatum wasn't Channing Tatum in 2009, but he has such a distinctive
He was Tatum out.
face.
Yeah.
He was
that,
this was the year that he did G.I. Joe. So he was like, I think he's come up. They were trying to make him a guy.
They were trying to.
You don't get to make fighting as a movie unless like people are really believing in your stock.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Is he one of those guys who's like secretly older than you think he is? Because he's been at it for a lot long.
Because he was a dancer too, right? Like he had that whole background. He's in his 40s.
He's 46.
Okay, that's exactly probably where I would put him.
Should have put money on it.
But Emily DeRaven's also in this movie. Shout out Lost. Shout out Claire. Sorry.
Shout out Claire. Kat will appreciate that you're shouting out Lost. I
was like, hey, it's Claire.
More momentum behind me finally watching Lost.
Isaac, we got to do it. And also, we got to convince Paco to do it. I've been trying to get Paco to watch Lost since we were in 9th grade.
Yeah.
And we went to high school together, and Lost was not cool, I would say, right in 2010, right?
Yeah, it was
right around when this movie's coming out.
Yeah, right after it ended, right? Or
Yeah,
did it
when
end in 2011.
2009.
Okay.
It was 04 to 2009, I think. Or maybe it was 2010. But like, Lost was definitely at a point where it wasn't cool. And now I would say is the perfect time to watch Lost, because it really is like one of those that we don't make them like that anymore.
We
Anyway,
definitely
sorry.
don't. It is, however, 25 episode a season.
Yeah.
Like, how many times could I watch Public Enemy on in the amount of time it would take me to get through the first season of Lost?
Oh, I'm telling you, you'll fly right through it. That's why my sleeping patterns are messed up. Is because I would rent Blockbuster DVDs of Lost and stay up way too late. I told this story I think on the podcast before, but my first laptop I ever had, I got a really nasty virus trying to download episodes of Lost that like when you would rent shows at Blockbuster, when like if someone else had the episodes, like you just couldn't watch it. That happened to me in the middle of season 4, and I tried to torrent or download episodes, and I got a really nasty virus on my computer.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Feel better soon.
Yeah. Oh, we're still recovering. Who are some other guys here that you were appreciating?
Who in the among the fellas, Rory Cochrane is there as well as one of the agents. In terms of who I was actually appreciating, I mean, like Giovanni Ribisi is, just such a I'm always happy to see him when he turns up in things, and it's like infrequent
You
enough.
say that, Isaac, but have you seen like some of the early Giovanni Ribisi performances?
I'm happy to see him now because he's mellowed out, and
Yeah, that's fair.
but
I think me and Paco have had this exact conversation. But I love that you love him.
I love Giovanni Ribisi. Why not? I can put that out there. That's okay.
Yeah.
He as far as I know, he's never done anything. Well, I guess he is a Scientologist.
Yeah, he's a Scientologist.
I was gonna say he's almost definitely.
Yeah. And we can definitely have a Scientology conversation. I feel like we've been kind of like circling that with the Tom Cruise mentions as well.
He was born into it. It's different.
He was born into Scientology?
I think he was.
Wow.
I think he.
Okay.
I think his.
I didn't know that.
I think. Am I wrong about this?
I'm not sure.
I just know
Okay.
him as our Sneaky Pete. Like
Cut it
that's
out. I just know him as the cinematographer of Strange Darling. That's what I know.
Shot on 35 millimeter.
Shot on 35. I know.
Wow, so exciting for them.
That was such a crazy experience in that movie when his name just shows up.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, him and Stephen Lang together, it was an Avatar reunion for me.
That's
Also, 2009.
Oh yeah, were they just? That's so many people were working on movies at the same time. Just thinking, I don't know, so many movies out there.
You've also got Dominic Lombardozzi in this as well, from The Wire, kind of coming over directly. And I think that's kind of what I like about a lot of the fellas in this is like you've got like the right tough guy for every role who is kind of there, but they're just kind of all walking around and doing their thing. It's not like, and so you're getting a lot of what Paco was talking about earlier with the idea of like this is where you've got a lot of people on paper, both on like the gangsters and the lawman side, to kind of make it feel like there's this existential struggle between all of the same super awesome dudes that will kind of like long outlast this specific thing going on with Dillinger.
Yeah. The other guy who popped up in my mind because he was in One Battle recently, the guy who is John Hugenacker. He's the one, I think he's the guy who's chasing after
Sure. Yeah, in the final act of the film.
in the final act of the film. This is one of his early roles. And it was a DePaul graduate and Chicago guy. Which is fascinating, and like you're saying, Isaac, it's just so interesting to see these guys interact with each other and where they come from, like having the Wire experience and bringing that to the set of because the Wire is kind of going for a similar thing that this movie's going, or for a Michael Mann thing, like a demystifying the idea of crime and seeing it from both the cops and robbers side, or the who's normally is the villains, who's normally the heroes, type thing. Stephen Graham is insane in this movie.
I was
Yes.
just about to say, like, he's the one who's like standing out as just a complete nut job, like unhinged like Graham in this movie. Um, which I'm always happy to see. He's another one who at this point was just one of the guys, and due to adolescence, now everyone is like, oh, he's a great actor.
Yes.
Yes, yes, he always has been.
He's been in stuff forever. I mean, his role in The Irishman, I think, is an all timer for me. He's just one of those actors that like you just look back into his career. It's just like he's been giving great performances since you know since he was born or whatever. But I do find like I love these late in career resurgences where like something like a Netflix show I will never watch um catapults a guy to be like 10 more years of supporting performances. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take it.
And Stephen Graham, the other thing I know about him, just because I did an interview with Taron Egerton around She Ride Shotgun last, I think that was last year. Um, and Taron Egerton said that Stephen Graham is his acting mentor and is apparently a mentor
Wow.
Interesting.
to a lot of young actors in the UK. And so
That's
he
cool.
spends a lot of time kind of coaching and just like being a support for younger performers who are kind of coming up. So I've always respected him since I learned that. But then like, you get a scene like, the scene where he dies in this film, like which is just like this iconic, shootout scene, and he's just completely chewing it up.
Yeah,
Um,
the gunshots in general in this movie are so intense. And the classic Michael Mann way of like it's not cool to shoot guns. It's really violent and scary. And so
yeah.
many of Michael Mann's shootouts are not like they're rattling. You know what I mean? It's like they're shocking. The violence is not cool. Um
Yeah, the Tommy guns are
the
just so the rattling, like the sound
yeah,
design of them is so intense.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
bright and like
Yeah.
in that way where like when they're all firing all at once, it reminded me of like the break in from Thief, which is unfortunately very cool. But I
Yeah, I think it's interesting to compare the shootouts in this movie to how Mann filmed like the shootouts in Heat. Where like in Heat, it's like it feels really like professional and very like the filming of it itself. It's like it's like easy to keep track of. It's like one of the most famous shootouts in movie history.
Right.
And here, it's I think the handheld nature of the cameras, it really makes it feel so chaotic. And there's like a textual element to it where it's like these guys are not professionals. Like they're all like there's not really like the professional criminals are the mafia guys, are like the guys who are like running this numbers racket, who are like slowly professionalizing, and like the FBI, interestingly, are like becoming like this massive system. And then there's like these like little guys who are like it's just really easy to rob a bank at this time. Like anyone could kind of do it. And like they're all kind of scared. They're all like kind of bad at their job, and it makes the shootouts feel more dangerous because like anything can happen. And the way that it's filmed, you can really feel that. Like all the cool shots where it's like from the point of view of the gun. I don't know. There's so many. It's crazy.
Yeah, but it's like it's so disorienting and it's so abrupt that you're kind of getting the kind of anti-heroic nature of it. Like I think that's another piece of where he's like taking this kind of the mythos of the gangsters and the llama, and then he's like, no, this was like, bloody and awful, and innocent people were just getting, shot and killed because of violence erupting out of nowhere um in there every day. And so yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's interesting to compare it to his other films because I think like that whole experimentation with digital cinematography at this point kind of really changes the way that he's depicting violence and what he is thinking about while he's doing that. It feels like this film is very much reflecting on kind of the narratives of violence and how that's kind of connected to the narrative of the celebrity when it comes to this. And you've got kind of both of those aspects that he's kind of taking down to size, but then by virtue of just showing how crazy like some of these shootouts were, he kind of turns them back into these like iconic pieces of history. like just the fact that they're happening in the way that they're happening.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I mean, something more generally about the movie I thought about a lot was the use of digital gives it this hyper realism that we often don't see in period pieces. Like thinking about like the other movie in our heist series that we talked about, the period piece, The Sting, which is also set in the Great Depression, and just like their approach to history is so different, you know, where it's like The Sting is like this cartoon of the past and like trying to it's like a reflection of the past based partially on like what movies in the 30s looked like. And this movie, like from the beginning, you're like there. It feels like you're watching a documentary almost. It's like someone like brought a digital camera to the 1930s and it's showing you like what it was like. And it's such the difference is so tangible. And then another movie that we talked about in the past, it's also set in this time period, which is The Untouchables, which is like those gun fights and like Brian De Palma. It's so over the top and so like stylized, and this movie is almost anti-style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like it's stripping away the mythos of, whereas the Untouchables is all about building the mythos of the FBI and the creation of, taking down the old West.
Right.
Michael Mann has a quote where he talked about the reason to use the Sony F23, which is the camera that they used to shoot this, was that he looked at that and he said that celluloid looked like a period film and digital looked like it was like to be alive in 1933. In the end, it makes total sense. Video looks like reality. It's more immediate. It has a verite surface to it. Film has this liquid kind of surface. Feels like something made up. It's interesting to call it like liquid surface. Like it's like it removes you from what's happening. I maybe we could discuss it a little bit, but I feel like since 2009, because digital has gone the way of trying to emulate the look of film, this almost comes across as being a style, right? Like it is a stylistic choice. So it for me it doesn't feel like I'm there. It feels like 2009. It feels like, you know what I mean? Like it feels like a representation of the era in which it was made, which is very interesting. And I love shot on video. This movie looks like Inland Empire at times. It looks like Curb Your Enthusiasm at times, which makes me giggle a little bit. But the texture that he gets from those night scenes, the texture he gets from moving close to actors' faces, the shutter speed, the way that it works, and that sort of blurring effect that you get of people moving, it makes you feel like you have PTSD or something.
Totally. I mean, I think like to talk about that early digital cinematography thing, it is an instance where the technology has evolved enough that it's kind of erased this specific kind of sheen or kind of lack thereof. This kind of like it's very sharp, but it's also kind of like gray and a little bit like muted in its colors. And like I think about like, Soderbergh's movies around this time as well. Like something like The Girlfriend Experience is like, very kind of its style is a piece of what it's kind of doing. The just like the way that it looks is that it is very intentional. And I think what's interesting about Mann is that he's been so interested to kind of embrace new ways of making films and just see what that's going to do to his pet projects and his preoccupations. And so this is an instance where I'm like, I'm not even sure if he and Dante Spinotti knew how this was going to come out or what the effect of it was going to be, but they just look committed to a specific kind of line. But no, I agree with you. I like you see a film that is like a digitally shot film today, and it looks nothing kind of like it. It's like the way that those cameras has evolved um, is almost to like, kind of soften the focus a little bit and to avoid just that really harsh quality of light that digital was doing at this point in time.
Yeah, and it feels counterintuitive. Like, why try to pretend to be something you're not? You end up in this weird middle ground where like none of our movies look good, or they don't look distinct. I mean, there's plenty of people working in the digital space who are doing interesting things. I don't want to just say that, but it's the general blockbuster, like a movie that has a Public Enemies, like all the color grading conversations that are being had right now are all sort of victims of this digital sort of takeover, and the push back towards analog, the push back towards film. I would love to see, and I'm seeing it amongst younger folks. I'm seeing it, in things like After Sun, digital cameras being used again, right, to emulate a feeling of the past, to emulate like Remember When. But there's a movie coming out soon. I will dig up the name in a moment. That was actually sent to me as a screener. That it's all digital, shot on video, but it's like a feature film. It's not used to emulate a style or like part of it is shot on that. It's like, no, the format that we've decided to shoot on is tape, mini DV capturing, which is, it's just interesting that we have directors and we have artists who are looking to emulate the style of 2006 to 2009 again.
Yeah, and the technical limitations of that as well, like, the memory cards that you have make it so that you have to like only get the shot that you're going to use when you're filming that. And like that can be a useful kind of constraint to put on an indie film, so that you're not just like getting endless footage and like having to like, show everyone how they're doing in every single scene. You technically don't have the ability to do that when you're using something like mini DV. I think about like the Glass Eye Pix films that were kind of being made early as well, like Ty West's early films. He's like such a format fetishist, but like, Trigger Man being shot on mini DV and like films of that nature, it is both like, a creative choice, and it does something to kind of the immediacy and the vividness of the filmmaking. But I can also appreciate people wanting to kind of set more of a frame and a limitation around what they're able to do rather than just kind of like filming everything on an iPhone.
Yeah, I think that man is obsessed with the way that like digital can capture infinity, like just like the vastness of a space. Like you could do basically a split diopter shot without having to split the diopter. Like you can have
Yeah.
the person in the focus in the foreground and the background. And you see that so many times in this movie where he'll have a character like really close to the camera and like looking kind of crazy, with like the background completely in focus, and that was just not something you could do without using a split diopter, with the limitations of film cameras. And I think um it's something that now we're obsessed with, split diopter, right? It's like something that's every time you see it you're like, oh my god, they're doing the thing.
Right.
But I think like
Um,
from a
a bit,
perspective of a filmmaker, what do you say?
I was just saying it's become a bit gauche almost to like,
Yeah,
like, oh, where's your split diopter shot?
unless you're doing it like M Night where you have a split triopter or whatever you call it, where it's like three different ones, and you're like, yeah, keep going.
Well, yeah, he's the
In
master.
Trap,
Using it
um,
like a jar, using a mason jar to create one, like
exactly,
not
Wild
gonna,
Man,
yeah,
um, and that's Cyan Blue, Muktapram, who's pioneering a lot of this stuff. But
yeah.
um, like if you're gonna use it to like Michael Mann had the experience of going through, and his films look so good on film. From Thief to Manhunter and stuff.
Black
I
Hat
love the
too.
way that those look.
Like when you're thinking about you've got like Public Enemies period piece where he's doing digital, and then Black Hat like modern conspiracy thriller where he's doing it, but he's kind of doing a similar thing about both of the across both of the films, where you've got like the blurry immediacy sort of thing going on, where it's like you're kind of and it is highly emotional as well, is what I find interesting about it. I feel like the way that Public Enemies is shot really contributes to the paranoia that Depp and Dillinger are kind of feeling as the net is closing in. It's kind of like the world is so kind of in constant focus. Um, and there's no sort of romance or no sort of, to use your term earlier, Jeremy, like there's no like distance, there's no liquid sort of surface that's kind of separating him from the bullet that's going to be coming at him.
Yeah, and I think that surveillance aspect, um, it also fits thematically with a movie where like this is the beginning of the surveillance state as we know it. Like the really great scene of Dillinger walking into the police department and then just seeing his whole life splayed out. And like that's something that like we're used to now. Like we know that like someone somewhere like in 2 seconds could come up with like our entire life and like all the bad things we've done and like put it on a board. But like back then, like that wasn't a thing. Like you were kind of just a nobody, and here was the system making you a somebody. And like I think that the filming actually like really does, like it almost feels like surveillance camera footage sometimes, like it really like it's I don't know, it's really awesome how Mann is able to use the technology and to really add to the content of the film itself.
And the all the wires plugged in, and you're in that room. It's so interesting to look at, of the surveillance, just like how moody the atmosphere is. It reminds me a lot of Black Hat.
Mm-hmm.
And it really I don't know, it makes those scenes suffocating, but it makes the scene like the internal, like what it takes to surveil someone, but it makes the scenes where they're out and committing these robberies, it makes them so freeing in contrast. And the way that those scenes look, my siblings, when watching this movie, like right away, my sister was like, why does it look like that?
Yeah.
And she wasn't against it, she wasn't angry. And I started explaining a little bit the Michael Mann digital thing, and they were like, got it, cool, interesting. And they rode the wave, but it was definitely a big like, why does it look like this? And my brother was kind of the same. He was like, why do some scenes look normal and some scenes look really weird? And I was, a little bit like, I don't know, and I have to do some research, and a little bit like, it's the lighting, right? It's like, it's the just like whatever, trying to push these things to the limits, like Isaac was saying, like, what are the limitations here? Like shooting at night is so difficult on those kind of cameras, but it pushes the limitations of what those things are able to do. And it there's a lot of grain, and there's a lot of you see sort of the edges of the frame there. It's really fascinating stuff. I'm really into the way that those night scenes look.
Mm-hmm.
The yellows, the greens.
Yeah, and I really love when I feel like now so much of how digital filmmaking is done is like so much of it is in post, like how you make a movie look. And I love when he's working within the frame to change how it looks. So like all like at the end where there's all like and I think it also happens earlier where he's using like the flares and like the flashing of the cameras to change like the color of like the actual image. And I'm sure there was some post-production work done as well, but like it makes it look incredible. And it adds this, even though the movie is very realistic to a certain, like there's a real sense of realism in the movie, but I think Mann never loses his painterly qualities even when he's using that realism.
Really well put. I mean, he is like, a painter of digital filmmaking. Like I think that it's amazing how, someone like David Lynch looks at digital and sees this like endless, like horrifying existential void like in Inland Empire, but Mann just sees it as like a different set of paints to use. And he is, I think, a pioneer in seeing how he can, stretch digital to kind of its extremes to get all of these interesting effects and to really like embrace the video look and the blurriness of it. Yeah, no, I think this is a really cool looking movie, and I think it kind of gets your brain working. It gets your neurons firing in a different way, just to kind of see pretty much everything, but especially the action shot in this way. I know that also from a sound perspective, he really was big on wanting production audio and didn't want any sort of post-production dubbing. So all of the actors were kind of really making sure that they were nailing their lines in the moment and in the shot. And you get, I think, a lot of that. I've heard some complaints about the sound mixing of the film and the sound design of the film, but I think it is just a product of him trying to create the feeling of like, what if I actually had a video camera during the Great Depression and during this kind of period of time, and I was just like there, kind of documenting what was actually going on between this gangster and this guy pursuing him.
Everyone is such babies about sound mixing. I'm like, it's like the Christopher Nolan thing. It's like, like you don't have to like it. You don't have to like Michael Mann's movies. You have to accept the style. You can't wish that it's something else. Not everyone is going to make their movies exactly the way that you want them to. You have to meet them where they're at. And we get anytime we play a Christopher Nolan movie, we have people complaining about the sound mix. And it's like, okay, like then the dialogue isn't as important as the visuals. Pay attention to the visuals. Like, pay attention to what's going on around you. You don't have to understand every line. And I think he gets that from Michael Mann, his biggest inspiration. And the sound mix on this movie is very particular. It's going for that. Like you're saying, Isaac, it's going for that feeling of you're gonna miss a few of the things that people say, and that big moments might be missed in the moment. I think that is underlined in the final scene of the movie where like the last words of this person, when Christian Bale asks, is it Purvis? Purvis is his character's name, right? Purvis
Yep.
asks Stephen Lang's character, like, what were his final words? He was like, oh, I didn't hear it. Only to then be relayed directly to the person who needed to hear it most. Like, it's
Right.
interesting. And
There's also something so interesting in that she already has heard that he's died. Like, news has already reached her. Like, I think that this is also a movie about the kind of like beginning of mass media and just of celebrity mass media, but also of the way that information is traveling being so different. And I think that the other thing that this kind of movie is shot to feel like is as if there's like a journalist embedded in the gang. Like, you're just like kind of like it's like a frontline news dispatch, which I think also accounts for the jarring nature of the violence because it's like, um, his filming style is very curious, but he creates kind of a world rather than like kind of creating this nostalgic image of it. He's like, he's trying to go a step beyond that so that you can like start thinking about image making in the culture of this time. I think it's a real feat of immersion that I think that the digital really makes a lot easier because if this were shot on film, I think we would be like talking about like the cinematography in a very different way about like the period look and like the vibe and the atmosphere like look maybe more like something like Todd Haynes's Carol where like you're getting all of this like really heightened visual atmosphere. The absence of that in this, I think it was really successful for me at least in being able to stop thinking about it as a period piece.
another movie that was shot on the F-23, which I didn't know, is the exact opposite of this movie. A movie that was just released again in theaters on all across the country is Speed Racer.
Mhm.
And it's just interesting that like one is being used to represent the most realism, verite, man on the scene feeling, and the other one is the most out of body experience, the most in a different world, uh, on the books of a comic book. Like it's so interesting the two ways in which this camera and this technology is being used.
Yeah, it almost looks like it's like a shot on DSLR, like in places. It's like it very it is very much like that time of 2009 where everyone is starting to think about, the possibilities of digital cameras as something other than just like kind of the camcordery aesthetic of something like Blair Witch. Like this is the point where the camera has evolved to the point where you can actually conceptualize your entire movie through it. Um, it is that turning point. And of course, the Wachowskis just shit like no one has made a movie that has used it as well as they did, and they did it so early in the process.
It's so like looking at this period of time, like 2007, 2009, with like this, like the kind of vast adoption of digital. It's so interesting, like seeing Hollywood, um, like kind of doing all these like in retrospect, all these like struggles over like what digital cinema should look like and will look like in the future. And like there's Speed Racer, there's this was around the time that like the MCU was kicking off. The same year as Public Enemies, there's Avatar. Like there's all these like different like ways that movies could and will look like in the future, and it's interesting to see what ended up winning, but to see all these paths that we could have taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that Michael Mann will continue to make movies. I know that Ferrari was not like, setting the box office on fire, and it was hard enough for him to get that made. But, I think Heat 2 is going to be huge, and very exciting. And so I'm excited especially to see how Heat 2 looks, because I have a feeling it's going to be surprising and different.
So
Um,
the scene that I want to talk about is Ferrari, the ending of Ferrari and the ending of this movie.
yeah.
They did remind me of each other in a lot of ways. That the one thing that really stuck out in this movie is that that one digital that CGI shot of the bullet going through his head, right?
Yeah.
It's really, really bizarre on these cameras. I don't hate it. I think it's interesting. It did make me laugh. It reminded me a lot of that horrifying scene in Ferrari when the car flips and hits the thing and kills all those people.
Yeah.
But that violence
God.
right at the end of the movie, like the way that Michael Mann leaves you on like some of the most violent images of the movie, and then it's like a race to the finish line. Like the movie is over within 3 minutes after that, right? Like him getting shot outside the biograph is there's one more scene after that, and it's barely any wrap up. And the look and the feel of those movies of like these characters don't get a lot of resolution from that violence. The what's left in their wake, it seems to be a theme in his work. And I was trying to think if there was other endings of his that are like that, but Ferrari and this movie felt very tied together in my mind.
Yeah. I completely see that. I think that he in Ferrari is very much like, building to this moment of incredible casualty and, incredible consequence for this guy who is so insulated. But I think like, in both films, it is kind of building to that moment of just, annihilative violence that does destroy and does not reshape anything. And for Public Enemies, it is like kind of the heat around the corner. And I think like Heat as well. Like Heat ends with, there's very little wrap up to Heat after, this cat and mouse game has kind of concluded. Ferrari is interesting because it's so death haunted the entire time. And this film, I think, becomes that like progressively as it goes. Like you've got, but I mean, to that point, it does open with Channing Tatum catching one, dead on, which I think it sets the tone for like, this is not really going to be an endless dance. This is going to be the hunted being just like kind of hunted down.
Yeah, I will say, I think that what the FBI did to John Dillinger was really, really bad. Like, I think that was just like like an assassination. Like, they just like, he clearly, he didn't really have any way to defend himself. Like, they should have just arrested him if they really wanted him. Like, but it was clearly like they were trying to make a point. And I think like we're all worse for history. It is a little satisfying seeing that happen to Johnny Depp. It is a little satisfying when that bullet goes right through his head. I was kind of like, you know what? If I'd been there.
I don't know where you were going with that, but I didn't expect that, Paco. I'm sorry. That really sent me. Woo.
It is like, it's very swift. Like he's done. Like and it is one of those things where you get no satisfaction to it because it is just kind of this like snuffing out of his life. Again, very anti-heroic in the same way that I think the little Bohemia Lodge shootout is very like confusing and anti-heroic as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that last scene because like there's so much buildup when he's watching the movie, and there's so little when the actual shooting happens, right? It's like flipped in terms of like he knows he's doomed, but he doesn't know. You know what I mean? It's so much is built on that connection between him and Clark Gable on the screen. I also love the way, by the way, that they figure out which theater he's going to. It's like
Mhm.
Stephen Lang being like, he's not going to the Marlboro. I actually don't know that theater,
The Shirley Temple. Oh yeah, yeah.
the Shirley Temple movie, but the Marlboro Theater from
Yeah.
that. He's like, he's not going to a Shirley Temple movie. Very funny moment. Have either of you seen, what's the name of the movie? Manhattan
Melodrama.
Melodrama.
I was gonna watch it and then I was in Japan, so I didn't.
No, I have not seen Manhattan Melodrama,
Yeah.
which is that's the film he's watching in the
Yeah.
theater. That is so interesting, and I'm sure that that's like an actual, like that's true. Like
Yeah,
That's what he was watching. Yeah.
yeah,
But
that's absolutely what he was watching.
But I love that Michael Mann watched the movie and was like, oh, there's so much thematic ties between what I'm trying to say in this movie. Like, it would have been funny if it was a Shirley Temple movie and she's like, saying, like, doing your cutesy dance and he's watching it in the same way.
Yeah.
The other idea that, I mean, because John Dillinger, is such a cinephile, I was just thinking about like what his letterbox top 4 would be the whole time.
What would John Dillinger's letterbox top 4
Letterbox
be?
top 4, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like they almost like seed that in the film, that this is a guy who's aware of the kind of the mythos around him, that he's kind of like, becoming larger than life. I think maybe, was there a Robin Hood movie before this point?
I'm sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
there was
I feel like-
yes, there was one.
I'm trying to remember who played Robin Hood, but that is escaping me suddenly.
Is it the guy who did all the pirates? Do you know early on?
The guy who
name?
did all the pirates?
Oh my god, the guy who was in all those pirate movies.
Oh, Errol Flynn.
Errol Flynn.
And
He is
That
the
was-
pirate guy.
Yeah, but that was in 38, so he wouldn't have.
okay,
Oh, there's a Douglas Fairbanks movie, which I'm sure you had watched.
Douglas Fairbanks is also what I was thinking. I was going to say
Yeah,
Douglas
yeah,
Kirk, like an idiot.
Yeah.
Kirk Douglas Fairbanks.
Fairbanks Douglas.
Yep.
Um,
But I do think that like what you guys were saying about his knowing his image, bank robbers being movie stars is so interestingly tied together in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It is funny that like, he doesn't feel like he either doesn't think he has a way out of being like a lot of these kind of figures that he kind of idolizes and sees himself as, or he just like doesn't want to change. Like he doesn't like want to be anything other than this kind of this celebrity, this myth. I think he enjoys having that kind of Hollywood depiction.
Yeah. Did either of you guys get a haunted feeling when Michael Mann kept showing racehorses? That I was like, oh god.
Oh God, no, I didn't even think about that. But you're
I was like, Michael, careful.
I can't believe that series is called Luck.
I know. Sorry. I just kept thinking that during those scenes and being like, away from the racetrack, Michael. Get those cameras away from those horses. Are there any other scenes in this movie that you guys want to discuss?
I mean, have we talked about the fact that like, the Biograph Theater was kind of like Mann's first relationship to this as well? Like the fact that he became aware of Dillinger as a kid because of where he was shot, and like that was his first connection, is like he was familiar with the fact that that a gangster was shot and killed in this location, and then kind of worked backwards later in life to learn more about his life. I think that's interesting. I guess I just kind of said it.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating though. It is, and it's this mythos of John Dillinger that we are aware of as, people who are interested in Chicago's history, people who are interested in film history, and people who are interested in American history. So it's all very the history of crime in this country, right? And the gangster, the movies that we grew up with. I mean, it's interesting that it all ties into this like theatrical space, and like Paco said, like it was like orchestrated to be this big show. Like they didn't have to do it like that.
Mm-hmm.
The outlaw era, like that entire criminal celebrity thing was kind of like, it's interesting because we were talking a little bit earlier about this kind of transition from local crime to federal policing and like the birth of the FBI, but it's like kind of the birth of the FBI and the death of the bank robber outlaw
Mm-hmm.
archetype. Like, after Dillinger, because of the example that they make of him, in part, at least in how this movie frames it, this entire mode of criminal celebrity is getting phased out for something else.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and you see that with like the mafia, the scenes with the mafia, like realizing that like, oh, like this might be like, this is bad for us too,
Right.
Oh,
Right.
so good. I love those scenes of them being like, why would we rob a bank for this amount of money when we make that amount per like day?
Yeah, yeah.
And so and then like the way it comes back at the end, they're like, we are also crossing state line. Like,
Yeah.
this is interstate crime. Like the FBI is gonna come after us too.
Yeah.
I love that. John Ortiz is so good in that, and he's just a Michael Mann mainstay.
Mm-hmm.
That crazy mustache he has too. Absolutely wild stuff. Before we wrap up our conversation here, Isaac, we just wanted to ask you the question that we ask everyone else. Do you have a recommendation for a restaurant or a place to eat here in the great city of Chicago?
Oh boy, I have so many like great restaurants that I could mention. I will say, like, for those who might be attending something at the Music Box soon, my favorite little spot in the Southport area is on the back of Crosby's Kitchen. It's called Ella Ellie. It's a really nice kind of, Mediterranean influenced share plates spot, but it's just the space that it has. It's just like such a nice place to go. It's got a lounge feel to it, lower lighting. The bartender there, Leo, is wonderful. And there's always something interesting on the menu. So I would recommend Ella Ellie.
It's good to fill in the area around the Music Box. Says there's so many good places to eat in Chicago, but I feel like I always go back to the same 3 spots. I've never been to LA, so when I'm back in Chicago, Isaac, I might take you up and grab a drink with you there or something.
Please do it. I would love that.
Unchain him.
Let me go, please. Let Isaac go from the basement?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
true.
This is when I'm walked. This is my my daily exercise.
Yeah, like you'll take
He's
him
got
up.
the zoomies.
Yeah.
Isaac's got the zoomies. Thank you so much, Isaac, for coming on our podcast and talking to us about this movie. You were a delightful guest.
Yes.
Hey,
Thanks.
it's been a wonderful to talk about this film. Thank you for having me, and apologies again for being a little late to
You're
join.
fine. Do you want to highlight any of your work, or where can other people find your writing, and do you have any projects coming up?
Absolutely. I have been lucky enough to have some regular work at Journal, which is the online letterboxed magazine. And so anyone who is logging films on Letterboxd, that tab furthest to the top right, when you're on the Letterboxd kind of landing page screen on the app, is Journal. And so, I've been lucky enough to have a number of interviews there recently that have been wonderful, including with Sophie Rambari for Blue Heron, including with Barry Levinson for the anniversary of Sleepers, and Steven Soderbergh and Kiyoshi Kurosawa for their recent films, The Christophers and Chime/Serpent's Path, respectively. So I've been really blessed to have work there pretty consistently, and upcoming there. I should have a career interview with Tony Leung in the next weeks. So I'm excited about that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the world's hottest man.
World's hottest man. I'm very nervous, trying to think about what to wear to the interview.
Everyone go read Isaac's work. It's truly a cut above. Isaac is one of our great film minds in the city of Chicago. We are lucky to have him. And thank you again for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank thank you to the Isaac Feldberg, our next Roger Ebert, for him being a delightful guest on 4 stars. Paco, you want to talk a little bit about the city of Chicago as it relates to Public Enemies?
Public Enemies was filmed in Chicago. Did you know that?
It was.
Yes.
It was.
Quite a bit.
But also in a little rundown town named Joliet.
Once again, Joliet. Is this actually... We thought it was a heist series. It's actually a Joliet series.
It's a Joliet hate series.
Yeah.
It's literally just because every time they do a period piece,
Yeah.
it's either Indiana or Joliet.
Yeah. Or in 8 Men Out, they did Cincinnati. But yeah, just all these random places.
Industrial rundown.
No offense to Cincinnati. Some offense to Joliet. But I mean, I guess the most important scene, which we talked about with Isaac, and that they filmed in Chicago, was in front of the Biograph Theater, which was a historical theater that John Dillinger was actually killed in front of. They initially apparently were trying to. They thought it'd be too expensive to film there. So they looked for other places, but they ended up just having to do it in front of there. I can't. I mean, I can't imagine why they wouldn't.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Yeah. But the Biograph Theater was a theater that was started in the 1920s ish, or 1910s maybe. I just read this today.
Yep, 1912.
That's when they bought it. And then, they opened the theater in 1914. So that was probably one of the very early on in theatrical show going. They probably barely even had features at that point.
Yeah.
And the kind of famous marquee wasn't installed until 1933, that was the year before Dillinger even died, and I guess that was the year that his shooting spree really started. So I feel I guess the marquee itself really captures that time period and the architecture and kind of the Art Deco style. The theater, I mean, that kind of catapulted it to international fame almost. The night that Dillinger died, apparently there were huge crowds. They kind of show it in the movie, but there were huge crowds of people, and people would dip their I think their handkerchiefs in his blood, because everyone was like this is someone famous died here, someone big died here.
I love that. I love that image of people dipping down and needing a piece of Dillinger.
Mm-hmm.
What I like about the theater itself is that I didn't know how big the Biograph was. I didn't know that they commissioned it to be not less than 999 seats. There used to just be these massive film houses with both upper and lower floor seating.
Yeah. And later at some point, I think maybe in the 50s or the 80s, at some point they made the main theater smaller so that they could they built 2 theaters on the second floor. So it ended up being by the end of its days, it was a multiplex. But after its initial, during, I guess, kind of I feel around the 60s and 70s, because of the rise of television, a lot of theater, that was kind of I feel the first big wave of theaters changing and closing, and the rise of the multiplex. That was the first time that independent theaters started closing. And the Biograph became kind of more of a midnight theater. And for a while in the 80s, that was the main theater that your favorite event, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, it became
the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, I said it was your favorite event.
It's not my favorite event. I've cleaned up way too many Rocky Horror Picture Shows for it to be my favorite event, but you made it sound like I hate it. It's the room that I hate.
Yeah. That's fair. But for a while in the 80s, the Biograph was the place where you went to go see that at midnight. Also the new 400 for a while. Interesting enough. But then the Biograph closed down as a movie theater in 2004. And it was bought by Victory Gardens which is a theater company, and they still own it to this day. So you can go to the Biograph. So it's kind of nice that they haven't torn it down or anything. But it would be nice if there was another theater around there. I guess the closest would be Landmark.
Yeah, that's right by the Landmark. But, you know, it would be cool to have like a neighborhood theater, not just a chain or a multiplex.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it would just be great if I feel like maybe we've talked about this in the past, but there used to be just theaters in every single neighborhood. There was a theater for a while down my block on where the Montrose Brown Line stop is. There was a theater right there, which they should bring back, I say.
Well, considering the fact that the Victory Gardens Theater has had a variety of controversies in the past 5 years, including the mass firing of a unionizing staff, who knows? There might be a new chapter ahead in which dazzling images on a silver screen appear.
Yeah. I kind of.
Who's going to pony up the money?
Someone. We need a rich Chicago.
Do you know who we
benefactor.
should convince? Do you know who we should convince? Michael Mann.
Oh yeah.
To buy the Biograph Theater. 100%. He should be our Quentin Tarantino.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, he should. Though I don't think
once Heat 2 makes $1.5 billion, he'll buy it.
Yeah. But yeah, there were a few other places that they filmed in Chicago. The Aragon Ballroom, the Auditorium Theater, just like a lot of like older buildings, the Uptown National Bank building, just like any like old looking building. I think they just like wanted, and I think
there's also like a lot of like like outdoor shooting in Indiana and Joliet, and then a lot of like indoor through a window in Chicago, so that you can just catch like the part of an Art Deco building.
Yeah.
And without seeing the cars, and it's, you know, a way to save money.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting comparing this to, I've brought this up already, but The Untouchables, which I feel like so much was like these exteriors and like downtown Chicago, and this I don't think there was any really scene that like had like the actual cityscape, you know. I feel like it was, I think part of what Mann was going for was sort of these like handheld, really claustrophobic shots.
Yeah, no sweeping vistas in this one. Really just spare images of, you know, wide open spaces that no longer exist in the city, mixed in with like crammed sort of like underneath the L tracks sort of vibes. And yeah, like a lot of like which is what a lot of like low budget period pieces do, which is shooting from a low angle.
Mm-hmm. But this was not low budget. This was actually incredibly high budget.
Right.
But I think that was part of like what he was doing. I feel like he's not because of the handheld, it lets him like do these like detail shots, and
he doesn't want to do a ton of CGI. You know, like you don't want to have to edit out like some guy walking through the background with, you know, an iPod shuffle. What was going on in 2009?
Yeah, I think first few iPhones.
Yeah,
iPhone 2. And then the one scene that we did not talk about, I think, or maybe we briefly talked about, was there's like the epic shootout in Little Bohemia Lodge where the FBI sort of sneaks up on the Dillinger gang, but they mostly fuck up. And that was filmed at the actual Little Bohemia Lodge, which still exists. That's where the gunfight happened. They filmed it there. You can do a tour there. Apparently the bullet holes are still there. It's like all like still there, and Mann was really wanted to film there.
That was in Michael Manitowish, Wisconsin. Had to make sure I got that on mic. Manitowish. Have you ever been to that area of Wisconsin?
I don't think so. That's like mid Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Am
I wrong in thinking that they shot at Ishnala and at in the Wisconsin Dells?
I don't think so. Have I been there? I don't think I've been to that part of Wisconsin. No, I've been like close.
They used Ishnala, which is a supper club in Wisconsin Dells for one of their filming locations. Yeah, it's like at Mirror Lake. They would shoot a little bit at Mirror Lake and then a little bit at Magic
Okay.
Wish. So like they used the real location and they also used Wisconsin Dells. Hopefully, so that the crew could go down some fun water slides.
That's
Can you
funny.
imagine Michael Mann going down water slides?
Do you think Johnny Depp went down some water slides? It's probably just
I'm
getting-
sure Johnny Depp went and drank on the town.
Yeah. Wisconsin was probably like home sweet home for him.
Exactly. Yeah, he was the least. he was the worst drinker out of the group.
Yeah. He was like, "Whoa, guys, calm down."
Oh yeah, maybe slow down a little bit.
I'll
I'll drive.
I do want to talk about the raid a little bit because the movie sort of gets into it, but I think the movie actually makes it seem like the FBI did a slightly better job than they did. But the raid was kind of like this huge controversy, and it actually got Melvin Purvis in a lot of trouble. So they like it's described in a lot of detail in the Public Enemy's book, but like they go up to this lodge, they get all this, they hear that Dillinger's this place. They like fly into this random part of Wisconsin. They sneak up to this lodge and they kind of just like, they see some people trying to leave in a car and they just start shooting. And then they start just like shooting a bunch of random people and they keep like thinking that they're in like a firefight with the Dillinger gang. But turns out like the Dillinger gang like had gotten away before they even got there. And so like all the people that they killed at the lodge were just like random citizens.
Wow.
And in the movie, I think that's the scene where they kill Babyface Nelson, but that's not what happened in real life. I think dramatically it works in the movie. I think that's sort of like an important. It's an important pivot point in the movie where that's kind of like where the heat is really on Dillinger, and that's when like he starts to like fuck up. But in real life, it was actually more of it was a very big embarrassment for the FBI, and that was kind of when they themselves felt the heat on them and felt like they had to get their shit together. But that's a really good yeah, I don't know. All those as we talked about with Isaac, all those shootout scenes are so intense and fun to watch.
They're really just like you're on the edge of your seat, and I really do love watching, people get ready for a shootout, into the intensity of the shootout, into the fallout.
Yeah.
Afterwards. It's always fun.
All those like shots of like almost like first person like video game kind of, like that.
Wait, say more.
Well, because of the handheld nature of the digital cameras, they're able to like get so close to the actual actors and like the guns. And so there's some scenes where like it's almost like from the point, like it's almost like it feels like you're a video game character like in a Call of Duty like shooting. Kind of like in the digital classic Gamer.
Right.
Which also
Same year, no?
Yeah, same year. Interesting.
This is just like Gamer.
Yeah, this is just like Gamer. Wow, 2009, what a year. I guess speaking of Chicago filmmaking, we've talked about 2007 and 2000 through 2009 was a really important time in Chicago filmmaking. There were a lot of tax credits, and so there were a lot of movies. And this was one of the bigger ones that I think I actually have the amount of money. The industry spent $141 million in Illinois, I think in 2008. So that was when Public Enemies was filming. And I mean, I love reading all these articles about Chicago filming at the time, because like I'll read about like, oh yeah, Public Enemies or Wanted or The Dark Knight, and then I'll see like 5 or 6 other movies that no one has ever heard of.
Yep.
That were filming in Chicago at the time. Or like, have you heard of like
Did you find a few?
Have you heard of the TV show called The Beast?
The Beast? No.
It was like a TV show. I think it was a cop TV show. it was Patrick Swayze's last production. Yeah, it was about a middle-aged FBI agent played by Patrick Swayze who goes undercover, called The Beast. We should probably talk about The Beast someday.
I've never even heard of The Beast. I'm looking at it right now.
It was a
Bizarre.
classic channel, A&E, which has all your favorite TV shows such as
well as
I'm trying to think of a single A&E TV show.
I couldn't tell you.
Duck Dynasty, apparently.
So tune in next week for our episode on The Beast. John Badham did a fucking episode of this.
Anyway, Jeremy, do you have any final thoughts on Public Enemies, Michael Mann?
I really think that I would like to watch a series of films that were shot digitally in this time, and watch them back to back. I think that would have put me in a better mindset than watching them alongside other heist movies, if that makes sense, bank robbery movies. I think I was pretty underwhelmed by the bank robbery scenes, if that makes sense. Like, the shootout scenes were cool, but the actual bank robbery, getting the team together, the stuff that we're sort of in the middle of in our series, I was sort of underwhelmed in this movie. But the things about this movie that I like are the visual style. Like, even comparing this movie to Thief is, like, even watching it within a Michael Mann perspective, I think is a mistake. Because it's lower on the Michael Mann list for me. It's probably last. I haven't seen The Keep. So this is probably my least favorite Michael Mann movie, which is a pretty high bar.
Yeah, so it's like the 9th best movie in the world. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like really, really solid movie. I think this movie's awesome, and I think talking about it is really fun. We had a great time talking with Isaac about it. But overall, I'm not like, I'm not going to return to this movie again and again. Nor do I think about it as being some great Chicago movie. So even talking about it in that section, I'm seeing here on the website that on the Wikipedia page that they shot at Libertyville High School, where my cousins went.
Wow.
Do you know what the other schools would call Libertyville, like the rival schools of Libertyville?
No.
When they would go to the games, they would dress up in trash bags and they would call them Povertyville.
It's like 1930 shit.
Yeah. I was like, what is going on in the Chicago suburbs? And like, my cousins live in Libertyville. It's totally like the same as other like suburbs. I guess it's considered slightly less fancy.
That's really funny.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there because I found that funny. I like this movie. I would probably give it 4 bangs, like rat-a-tat.
4 like digital, just 4 gun flashes, digital. You know how they appear in this movie, kind of like star shaped.
Yes. And what would you give this movie? What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I watched it when I was super jet lagged and sleep deprived, so I think I'm excited to watch it again. I was excited to rewatch it since I hadn't seen it since middle school, and I'm excited to watch it again now later. I think it almost has like a dreamlike atmosphere to it. Maybe I'm just saying that because I felt like I was in a dream while I was watching it. But yeah, I definitely do think that if anything, out of the movies that we've talked about so far that it reminds me the most of, it's almost like normal life, like I think like that kind of realism and it's not like, the robbery scenes aren't like flashy fun stuff. It's like, these are actual dangerous situations. Like, these are actual, like, people die in these situations. Like, this can be bad. And I think
Yeah.
I think the movie's like attempt at some sort of realism makes them less fun, but it makes them more interesting. And yeah, I think that the digital filmmaking is super interesting, and it is cool to think about what was going on with digital filmmaking at the time, and it's sad to think about how this type of movie isn't really made outside of like an independent context. Like the fact that this cost over $100 million, that's pretty crazy. The fact that this was released on 4th of July weekend and it was like this supposed to be a big blockbuster hit. I mean, I think it still did relatively well. It's probably one of his better movies at the box office. But it's still it's you watch it now and it's like what is this like weird avant-garde movie? And then
This movie made $214 million worldwide.
yeah, it's the Johnny Depp magic. I don't know.
That's crazy.
I think it's just like it's yeah. I don't know. I think he could just get any movie pretty successful at the time.
Have you ever heard of Dildo Heaven?
No.
Dildo Heaven is a shot on video movie released by Muscle Distribution recently. This movie looks like Dildo Heaven.
Yeah, it is. Again,
It's shot on video. It's really bizarre that to watch at times because it's like what am I looking at home videos? Am I looking at
yeah.
And then there's other times where it looks like a totally normal 2009 movie.
Yeah, there's when we were talking with Isaac about other movies that this reminded us of, and other people who now are using digital video as like an artistic choice, and I was thinking of the movie Rap World, which is sort of like
Yes, exactly.
Which is I think it's set in 2009 or maybe 2008. They've all watched The Dark Knight. That's the context of the movie. They don't mention it at all, but you know. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting movie. I'm not entirely convinced by Johnny Depp, though. I understand the logic of choosing him, and I don't know. I love Michael Mann. I do I would kind of rate this among, in my ranking of his filmography, I would rank this towards the bottom, but like none of them are movies that I dislike. Would you rank this below Ferrari?
I gotta rewatch Ferrari. There's things about that movie that work better than this movie for me, and then there's things about that movie that are way worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the lead performance of Ferrari more than Depp.
Yeah, definitely. I prefer Driver. I'm trying to think of what other, because I feel like there's like 5 Man movies where like every time I watch them I'm like, oh, this is the best one, and then like I guess like then there's the others. So I'm trying to think of what I would rate it. Like I think
Mohicans near the bottom for me.
Really, I really fuck with Mohicans. I watched
that. Makes total sense. You're such a Mohicans head. Like I can't describe it, but there's something about you that's like you love Last of the Mohicans. And it's not an insult. It's like there's something historical about it. There's something rooted in like the American mythos a long time ago.
It's really there's a nice romance to it. Yeah, I really like. That's one of. I think I would say that's one of the 5 that
are near the top for you.
Yeah, I mean that are just like, okay, this might be the best one.
I think Ali is one that is underrated.
That's one I didn't connect with as much, but I'm curious if I watched it.
See, I'm an Ali head, and you're a Mohican. This just makes sense. There's something there. It's about sports. It's about like
history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Ali's great. I think that's another performance that I kind of rub up against. It's a weird one.
Will Smith.
Yeah.
I love him in that movie, but I'm also pretty forgiving of Will Smith.
Yeah. Anyway, what I would give this movie, if I had to rate it, I would probably rate it 4 FBI badges, which kind of look like stars if you think about it. Which coincidentally is kind of like the Chicago flag. I don't know. If you-
Mm. Wait, the Chicago flag?
Yes.
Oh, 4 stars.
4 stars.
Paco, do you have any recommendations for what you've been watching or reading or doing lately?
What do I recommend? I went to Japan recently. I would recommend doing that. I would recommend getting out of the country and going to a place where your American dollars go very far. But while I was in Japan, I read this book, a novel that I've owned for over a decade, and I was going to Tokyo, and I was like, well, this is set in Tokyo, so I have to read it. Called Coin Locker Babies by Ryu Murakami, the other Murakami author. And it is really crazy, but it is really good. It's about so in the 70s and a little bit in the 80s. Do you know what a coin locker is? They have them a lot in Japan. I mean, I'm sure they used to have them in the United States as well, but they're like, when you get out of the airport or you get off the train and you have a bunch of luggage, they have all these like lockers that you put in some money in, and you can put your luggage in there for a day, so that you don't have to carry it
Oh,
around.
yes. I've heard about
And in the 70s and 80s, there was this like phenomenon of like women who like would give birth to babies that like they were like kind of for whatever reason they didn't want, and they would leave the baby in the locker.
Oh,
And most
geez.
of these babies died. But
Yeah, I can imagine.
and the novel is about these 2 babies who lived and sort of their crazy fucked up lives after, and how they want to get revenge on their mom. It's really freewheeling and weird. And it has one of the most unpleasant first paragraphs that I've ever read. And kind of why it took me so long to read it. But once you get past that, it is a very unpleasant read, but it's very fun. I would recommend it.
Yep.
Do you have any recommendations?
I do. I watched a few things this week that I really liked. A movie called Decorado. Have you heard of this movie? It's by Alberto Vasquez, a black comedy drama animated film. It's being released by G Kids. It played at the Chicago Critics Fest opening night. I believe Isaac did the intro for it. Isaac Feldberg, guest on this episode. It's a really interesting movie. The director himself has sort of compared it to a mix between Truman Show and Ingmar Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage. It's a really interesting fable about mice in Spain. Really liked that. I also rewatched. We're launching into our Cary Grant series called Everyone Loves Cary Grant. It's from a quote of Cary Grant's where he said, everyone wants to be Cary Grant, including Cary Grant. It's a really fun series that we're doing here at the Heights Theater. And so I watched Charade earlier today. And what a delightful, bubbly, fun movie.
Is that one it's a later Hitchcock?
It's a Stanley Donen movie, but it's very
right.
Hitchcock-like. It's going for Hitchcock energy for sure. It was also done at the Heights a few years ago as part of a series called Not Hitchcock, which were movies that were very similar in tone and style. But a very fun movie nonetheless. Charade. I recommend it. Good movie. Audrey Hepburn. Super cute.
Cute. That's an interesting way of describing it.
She's really cute.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, just like one of the most beautiful, famous women on the planet. And like, yeah,
yes, I understand that, and I'm not denying that. I'm just saying she's also just like really fun and cute in it. Like she's like, she's the template. She's the original recipe. So many of the girls want to be Audrey Hepburn, and they're not.
You know who's really cute?
Cary
Walter
Grant.
Matthau.
Oh yes, I was just talking about Walter Matthau because he's so good in that movie. I was talking about taking a Pelham 123 with a friend. Anyway, that's what I recommend. Decorado by Alberto Vasquez and Charade by Stanley Donen.
Nice. Well, thank you for listening. Our next episode in the One Last Score series will be 2010's Cash, the S with a dollar sign. So try to find that if you can. And
Yeah, wait, where can you watch it?
I really have no idea. Well, it's playing on everyone's favorite streaming service, Zumo Play. So go on Zumo Play and watch Cash.
And it looks like it's also on Pluto TV.
Awesome. Zumo
Also,
and Pluto.
If you are friends with us, contact us. Maybe you can borrow my DVD if you catch my.
I'm gonna watch this on Zumo, so I'm not.
Oh, okay. Fine.
But if you have any comments, complaints, hate mail, love mail, you can email us at chicagopodfilmcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media at chicagopodfilm on whatever social media site you want. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Please be considerate when talking on your phone or listening to electronic devices.